Mr. Cheeseborough wrote that when the joint session of Congress got to Arizona in the alphabetical list of states, the vice president should not count the Biden votes, quote, because there are two slates of votes. His justification was that a group of Trump supporters in Arizona and other swing states decided to proclaim themselves the true electors for the state, creating two sets of electors: the official electors selected by the state and a group of fake electors.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in New York. I'm Jen Psaki in for Nicole Wallace. The fake elector scheme was the linchpin to Trump's belief that he could overturn the election on January 6th. And one of the architects of this illegal plan, Kenneth Chesebro, has been facing the consequences. In October, he pleaded guilty in the Fulton County racketeering case. While he wasn't charged by the special counsel, he is part of Jack Smith's election interference case against the ex-president. He has been identified as co-conspirator number 5 in the indictment. And we recently learned he's cooperating with Michigan state prosecutors in their case against the over a dozen fake electors there. Now, NBC News can confirm, after speaking with the attorney for Chesebro, that when Chesebro had a meeting with Michigan prosecutors last week, he told them about a significant Oval Office meeting between Trump and attorneys that took place in December 2020. CNN, which obtained audio of Chesebro's comments to the prosecutors, reports that before a group of supportive lawyers entered the Oval Office for a photo op with then-President Donald Trump in December 2020, they were given a clear instruction, according to one attendee: don't get Trump's hopes up about overturning the election. One attorney, Jim Troupis, towed the line. He just finished leading Trump's failed elections challenge in Wisconsin and bluntly told the president it was over in that state. But when the conversation shifted to Arizona, attorney Kenneth Chesebro deviated from the plan. He told Trump he could still win and explained how the, quote, alternate electors he helped assemble in Arizona and 6 other states gave Trump an opening to continue contesting the election until Congress certified the results on January 6, 2021. Trump, rather than coming to terms with his loss, latched on to Chesebro's optimism, no surprise there, and continued his false claims about the election being stolen. Chesebro recounted to Michigan prosecutors that concern then followed.
There was a subsequent email a week later where Troupis said that it's extremely important that the Reince Priebus, it's extremely important that there be no one ever learned what happened in the meeting. And I don't actually know quite, but it was probably related to what I told the president about real deadline and about Arizona, and so it was something. There was something very sensitive about what happened in the meeting that they was concerned about. That had to be kept quiet.
Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's ranking member of the House Oversight Committee and a former member of the January 6th Select Committee. Few people, maybe no one, knows these cases as well as you do. So I want to start by asking you what you make of that reporting about that Oval Office meeting in December of 2020.
Well, that strikes me as a decisive clue as to how then President Trump started to zero in on January 6th as the key date. What Chesebro was basically saying there was, well, you can go the legal route and try to get courts to overturn the result in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Arizona. But if those doors close, and remember, 60 federal and state courts rejected all those claims of electoral fraud and corruption, well, there's still the chance of getting something to happen on January 6th, which had always been viewed as a purely ministerial and ceremonial moment where Congress met under the 12th Amendment and simply validated and received the Electoral College votes, which were settled. But what he was saying was you could create counterfeit electors, essentially, to rival the validated certified process. Remember, those results were all certified by the governors in what's called certificates of ascertainment. So the official process had already taken place. And Chesebro was basically saying, no, let's create a parallel fraudulent process. And that could become the justification for the vice president stepping outside of his constitutional role, throwing his hands up and saying, oh, I just can't decide. Let's kick this into the House for a contingent election, or maybe even getting the vice president just to declare that Trump would be the president.
Which Trump clearly glommed onto, we know well. There was another interesting detail in that audio that CNN shared about Reince Priebus not wanting anyone to know about what happened in that conversation. What did you make of that?
Well, I mean, some of them evinced that consciousness of guilt as the events were unfolding and didn't want to be known as being part of this plan. I mean, remember, all of the documents that the official electors present to the governor, and then the governor presents to the archives and to the Speaker of the House and so on. These are all authenticated, certified, stamped documents. And so they were creating phony documents to try to undermine and supplant the real process.
You spoke with him as a part of the January 6th committee investigation. Right, correct?
Who you're
Ken
talking about?
Chesebro, yes.
But personally, I did not.
But the committee did.
Yes.
Do you believe he's clearly trying to get himself out of deeper hot water here by cooperating?
Yes.
Do you think he's faced enough consequences or will for his role in this?
Well, you know, I'm waiting for more facts to come out, but I get the feeling about Mr. Chesebro, who I did serve on law review with, so I know him a little bit.
It's a very small world detail.
It is a small world. But I should say that I get the sense that he would like it to be said that he was just spinning out some academic hypothetical theories, and it was others who took the ball and ran with it, and therefore he should be insulated from the actual legal consequences. He was basically saying, well, if you wanted to rob a bank, here's the way that you would do it, and here's how you would claim legality for an essentially fraudulent process. But he anticipated that he was in enough legal danger himself that he decided he was going to spill his guts and tell exactly what happened, presumably, in order for consideration from the court.
It's an interesting thing to watch. He's become a very interesting player, I guess has been. Before I let you go, I did want to ask you about Jack Smith's decision to request the Supreme Court to weigh in on Trump's presidential immunity claim in the federal election interference case. What do you make of that? What do you make of all the timeline of everything?
It's an awesome and necessary decision because Donald Trump is clearly trying to run out the clock in all of his litigation, and this is an essential case. And he didn't want to wait for this to go all the way up through the D.C. Circuit, a panel on bank, to get to the Supreme Court. He had the authority to ask the Supreme Court to intervene, which is something that happened during the sequence of events in Watergate as well, to deal with what are very easy legal questions. I mean, when you know, Donald Trump says he has immunity for whatever he does as a former president, you mean he can actually go out and shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and he can't be prosecuted? He can rape people, as we know he might have some predilection to do, and he can't be prosecuted because he's immunized against everything, conspiracy to overthrow the government, steal documents and so on. I mean, it's absurd. The other argument, of course, is double jeopardy, which is even more laughable. The idea that because you go through impeachment and a Senate trial, it would be double jeopardy to try you for things that might, interact with or overlap with charges that were brought before. The Constitution itself, in Article 1, Section 7, Clause 3, I think it is, specifically refutes that. It says that if you're being impeached, that extends only to removal from office and disqualification from office, but prosecution and trial at law will lie nonetheless later on. So it's an explicit refutation of that argument. I mean, that is a one-paragraph dismissal of that absurd argument.
Very few people can cite specific clauses of the Constitution. I think it's important for me to remind viewers. Now, there was a lot of news out of the Supreme Court this week that could impact, of course, the timing of the January 6th case, a case and an investigation that you know a great deal about and worked a great deal on. Are you worried about the timing of this and the outcome slipping too late to have an impact on the election?
There's really no more important case in the country than these cases that relate to the crimes, the frauds, the electoral sabotage, the attempt to deny voting rights to the people than the ones that face Donald Trump. I mean, it's hard to think of it. And there should be a premium on getting these cases heard. And obviously, he's got the presumption of innocence, but he doesn't have a presumption of being able to delay everything as long as he wants. And if, in fact, he's convinced of his innocence and he's got the evidence to rebut a prosecutorial case, then he should do it. But, you know, these cases need to be heard, and no phony arguments about double jeopardy or prosecutorial immunity should be allowed to stand in the way of us getting a definitive legal judgment about what he did. You know, and what's interesting is so many of the people who were very troubled, according to their own account, by his conduct were saying, well, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, there's a 57-43 vote in the Senate to convict. That's a majority. It didn't get to 2/3 for conviction. But we'll let the courts sort it out if there are actual crimes. Well, now is the moment when the courts are going to sort it out. There are 91
This is the moment.
Federal and state charges against him, felony counts all over the country, and it's time for him to face the music.